Hi everyone, we're now into chapter 4.2, or chapter 4, lesson 2, and we're going to be looking at how to create a material. And I was going to start by saying that in the last lesson I was trying to do something in the splash screen and found out that I'm using the personal version. The reason for that is that I've got an activation issue with this computer. So you're allowed 2 serial numbers. We're allowed a serial number for the Pro account, and you can apply it to 2 computers at a time. I've only got it installed on 1 computer at my home and this one here, but for some reason this computer's not taking it. So Unity is sorting it out at the moment with a support request. So just in case anyone's wondering, I am allowed to use a personal version. You're allowed to use a personal version. My company earns under 100,000 a year, so that's fine. And I'm not using it professional capacity at the moment because I'm making training videos. So it's fine for me to be using a personal account for this, but I do own a Pro account. I am licensed. It's not activated on this version. And I'm only saying that because I've been criticised before for using a training version of another software to do training videos. So just covering it off. So how to make materials. So there's 2 things we can do. First of all, let's create a standard cube. And because I'm all zoomed out at the moment because we're using user interface, I'm just going to double click on it, drag us in. Ooh, where's it gone? Oh, I'm in my game mode there. Scene, there we go. There it is. So there's my cube. I'm going to put some light in the scene as well. It just looks a bit dark. So I've got some lights, directional light. Let's spin it round. Where is that? Because we were playing with it before, weren't we? So let's zoom in. No, I'm just going to put another directional light in here just to want to get the right light on it so we can understand what's happening. And I'm going to put that back to global position. We can see. There we go. Right, so now we can see what's happening. So one way to create material, see we created a cube. It comes automatically with just a standard lit material. So it says universal render pipeline because that is the, we're using the universal render pipeline rendering mode, which remember at the very beginning of this course, we were setting it up in this mode because we get the best quality in most applications. So automatically it goes to the standard lit URP material. Now if I just click and drag one of my images onto this, you'll see what it's done is applied it straight away and it's created a new material for me. There we go, that base map now has been applied. That's the RGB albedo information on base map. And normally they use different names for the same thing. So it's textures, albedos, base maps, it's all the same. Now if you want to find out where that lives inside our tree, you right click on it and go to select material and it takes you to where it is. Now it's gone into automatically into content materials, which is quite handy. That's where we wanted to keep it. And it's called textures com wall ron ornate 1K albedo. That's because that's the name of the texture that we brought in. So it's created for us a material. If we click on that, we can get all those details. You notice the details there are exactly the same as the ones that are down here. So we can access them in 2 ways. We can either select the material itself and working on it here, looking at this view, or we can select it in here. But the point is, it's the same material, so anything you change, you'll see it live in the editor. So for instance, I can change the smoothness, and you can see it's reflecting the light differently. If I click on this here, you see that smoothness is still where I left it, and you can see it in the editor here, and we can change that. It's actually better to see it like this, I think, because you can see it moving in the scene and on this material, which you can spin around. Now it's on the metallic workflow at the moment. We could change this to specular and it changes some of the settings. Metallic's most common. You've also got a transparent option, which only really applies if you've got an alpha. So blending mode alpha, if you're using a PNG, you might want to use that in order to create some transparency. Render faces on the front, back or both, depending on what sort of material it is. So if I've got a plane which has, remember we did this before and we can see the one side but you can't see the other side. If I apply that same material, there we go, so I can see one side, not the other. If I click on that material and we make it both, hopefully it'll work. Yeah, there we go. Now we can see the back of it as well as the front. It hasn't got lights coming from underneath, that's why you can't see it there. I'll delete that. Okay. And what else can we tell you about materials? So we also have the alpha, depending on what you're bringing in terms of alphas, you can change this and it creates different shading. You can create it, make it more specular. Metallic map just makes it a bit shinier. Now here you've got all the other slots for importing things. So if you have all those different maps that I was showing you in the last lesson, so texture.com allowing to have a a height map or a normal map, that's where they go. The ambient occlusion map will go in there, and occlusion map. Metallic map is your specularity or shininess. So I might put your roughness map into there. And all those things can be applied. Now, another thing that you could do is the emission, which is really handy. If I click on this and change the HDR to white, you see now it glows like a light source. Now, what I could do is I could import a different map onto that. So let's go to textures. Okay, I'm going to teach you a little trick, which is really handy. If you go to materials and click on this, you don't want to lose this inspector because you're working on it. Click on this little padlock at the top here and it will lock it in place. So now you can click around and you won't lose it, because that is really annoying when it does that. So I'm going to take my texture and I'm going to take my logo here with the alpha on it, the sprite. Oh no, I can't bring a sprite in. It'll have to be this one. I can drag it into the emission map. There we go. And now I've got the emission overlaid on top of my other texture. So if you actually get close to this, you can see you've got your texture underneath, but it's glowing these colours. So you could have a map that's just got some points of light on it, maybe like some bright white spots that'll make it look like it's got a star cloth effect or something over the top of a black. So that's where the emission map's quite handy, and you can up the output of that so it looks like it's really glowing, or you can lower it down so it's darker. And obviously we can override the colour of it as well, so we can make it glow red. So that's a good way of doing a light source in the scene. This is very low processing needed for this. Like, you don't need a really complicated light source that's using a lot of processing power, because it's trying to process the light beams and how it bounces around the room. It is literally just playing a texture, and it creates all this with a lot of efficiency. So this is a really good way of doing a light source. And if you want to get rid of it, we're going to have to come up here and click none, and it disappears, and then we can turn that back to black. There we go. So that's base maps, emission maps. Now, something else I'm going to show you is up here, is the type of shader that we're using. Now, this is where the terminologies will get mixed up a little bit. The material's built out of different shaders, and if you click on this, you'll see loads of different types of shaders, and this is the base that the material's been built out of. And because we're in the URP, these are all the standard URP materials. Now, lit's the most normal one. Simple lit's the same, but it will remove some of the options, and it runs a bit more efficiently. You've got an unlit version, so it doesn't take light. So it's always there, but it doesn't do any processing of light, which is handy again if you're trying to make something really efficient, but not that useful if you're trying to understand how to make something for theatre where we're lighting things. You've got some other things that are kind of cool, like toon. You might want to use a toon shader. It doesn't work in universal render mode though. The pink always means that it only works in the other version, the original version. So there's a few things here, like I think standard won't work either. No, that doesn't work, because that's for the normal render pipeline. And then you've got custom ones if you make your own. You might make your own shaders, and then you can build out of them. You've got VR, which is handy if you're making VR experiences. Now, if you import a particular plugin, so for instance, I've got mobile settings here for making mobile apps, you might want to use this because it's really efficient. It's just basically the base RGB, but again, doesn't work in the universal render pipeline. These were made for the original low quality version. So, I mean, if you're working in here, you're going to be working with URP. If you were using HDRP, the high definition render pipeline, you would see high definition render pipeline here. So there's lots of different options. I think that you'll most likely be starting with lit. Autodesk Interactive, as if it's come from what was Stingray, is now 3ds Max Interactive. Don't just use these. Baked lit means that you've baked the light into the texture, but you can do that with a lit and just run bake. So I can't see a reason why you'd ever want to use anything other than lit. There is one exception to that, which is transparency. Now, if I try typing in here, transparent, one of these might be used for making transparency. So there we go. Now we've got the alpha cut off. So if I've imported another image, I'm going to drag my logo in. There we go. Now we've got transparency applied here because we've got the alpha. So that doesn't do anything because the alpha is already applied. So because it's got the alpha already selected in the options, if I bring in one of the others which didn't have that, oh no, it's done it automatically. Wasn't expecting that. That's brought in the alpha automatically. So yeah, the idea is that as long as it's got an alpha texture, it will create a transparent image for you. So that's quite handy if you just wanted to have like a cut cloth. So you've got lots of detail around the edge of a cloth. What you do is you'd create a plane, spin it around so it looks like a cloth, very, very roughly. And then we bring in an alpha texture. And see that one, we haven't applied the alpha to it. So let's unlock this. So we get rid of the material we're looking at. I'm going to click on the plane. Here's our material that we just imported. It's in the lit mode. We're going to make it transparent. And there we go. Now it's blending with the alpha. And that's just pretend that's our cut cloth. So that goes there. So there we go. And then light will go through that. There is a way of doing that. Alpha clipping will now process light clipping through that as well. So it will treat it like a 3D object, but very, very low low processing requirements to do that. So you don't have to worry about really complicated rendering modes where the processor and the graphics card are having to do lots and lots of work. Alpha textures and using textures for emission and light, it's a really efficient way of building up a scene without having to do lots of processing. It's really tempting to cut out 3D mesh of a cut cloth, especially if it's on like trees and there's lots of detail. Don't do that because you've got an enormous amount of geometry. You can bring in tens of thousands of polygons, which you really don't want. Just bring in one plane, but just use a plane in Unity and bring in an image with an alpha on it, and you can apply that, and it will be using hardly any processing at all. If you wanted to have lights built into that, bring in an emission map, again in Photoshop, with little points of light all over it, and let that glow, rather than putting loads of light sources in Unity, because that uses lots of processing. So it's just about being clever, using the tools inside Unity like this to be able to make efficient 3D models that look really good, that run smoothly, and therefore work really nicely. The only problem with that is if you want to make changes, if you're doing it for visualization or design, you'll have to bring in a new map. And obviously you can make changes, like I showed with the emission map. I can make it brighter or dimmer. But if you want to move things around, you'll have to bring in a whole new map from Photoshop, a new layer, texture, whatever you want to call it. So that's the basics of materials, and you can have loads of fun with that. And we're not going to talk about shaders and substances because it's a whole other thing. The only thing you need to know about shaders is that you may find some on the asset store, and then you can import them and download them. If I go to create a shader here, where is it? I can't even find it because that's how often I use them. You've got materials, render textures. No, it's not even here, is it? So you can't even just make one. Oh, no, there we are, shader. So you've got a standard surface shader. So you might want to create one, and you'll see what happens. Where's it gone? It's having a little think. No, it's just disappeared. Where's it gone? Did I do that wrong? Create shader, standard surface shader. There it is. Now you see new surface shader. If I click on it, it gives you all of this. There's nothing really there to manipulate and change. It's looking for code. So you have to then build some code to control and manage that shader. And we're not doing code. That's the whole point. We're trying to avoid coding. This is the non-coding version of Unity use. So that's why we're staying away from shaders, because it's just something we don't need to get into. You can do everything you need with textures. In fact, there was one other thing I was going to show you, which is videos, applying videos. So I've got an animated logo, which I'm going to bring in. Let's find it in my folder structure. So it is. So I'm going to click and drag this video in. It's an MP4. And I'm going to put it in my textures folder. So it's a logo intro. It should give me a little preview. There we go. If I click on play. So that's my little video logo. Now you can apply this to materials as well. Let's just click that off. So if I click and drag this in, it's created a little video. You won't see it until you hit play. Hoping this is going to work. We've still got acapella. No, that hasn't worked. It hasn't gone in. But one of the challenges with videos is that sometimes you have to. No, it's not worked because it doesn't go in there. What you have to do is you have to build a video player that will run it. which then goes into your UI or into your 3D model. So we'll cover that in another lesson because that is quite complicated, but it's just something for you to know that you can also bring in your video clips, and you've got the same sort of options here to make changes to its quality, its size, and stuff like that. If you bring in something that isn't compatible with Unity, there is a converter. So in here, you will see a way of converting the video into an optimized Unity format, which is basically an MP4. But if you're using H.264 videos, MP4s, that's the best way to go. Nice and small, keep them really low resolution, no higher than they need to be. Don't bring in your 4Ks directly from your Arri Alexas and things. It needs to be a really small, efficient file that can run smoothly inside a game engine. Remember, a game engine is it's just a render engine that's doing something in real time. So the less processing it can do, the faster it will run, the better things will look. And we'll come to videos later on how we can use those, because it is it's something you probably want to do at some point. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson, and it's also the end of this chapter because we're just talking about textures and materials. In the next lesson, we're going to start constructing a scene, so we can start putting all this all together to see how we can build actual 3D models of our productions and our scenery, to see how it looks together. Okay, so thank you very much.